There we go. Nice.
Thank you, dear. Thank you. Thank you. 谢谢。
Hey, man.
Can you guys step back a little bit? Step back a little bit.
We are at 125th Street, at corner of 3rd Avenue in Manhattan. Live streaming
We're
for
starting now.
in memory of Yao Pan Ma.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming today as we remember Mr. Yao Ping Ma. In April last year, while collecting used cans after losing his job, Mr. Ma was viciously beaten into coma here, right here, and finally succumbing to his injury 2 weeks ago. Today, we want to remember how he faced head-on the hardship of leaving behind a familiar country and came to America to seek liberty. To make ends meet, he was willing to pick up used cans to support his family. Let's remember the adventurous spirit that brought him here, the grit and the tenacity it took, and his willingness to sacrifice for his wife and his children. Mr. Ma, we are so sorry America has disappointed you. We failed to provide for you when your apartment caught fire and when you lost your job. We failed to improve the safety of our streets, especially this part of 125th Street, which we know for decades as unsafe. Just look at those broken windows over there. We failed to help people with mental illness. We failed to curb anti-Asian sentiment. And we will fail again if we don't hold elected officials accountable for making fundamental change in Harlem and in New York City. Thank you for all the Asian seniors who come out to mourn for your own blood. 谢谢你们亚洲的老人家会都过来今天的梦的，都是想你们的同胞。So the next speaker is going to be Carlin Chen. He's the one who has tirelessly supported the Ma family since the incidents for 8 months. He will be addressing the audience on behalf of the grieving family. He will be followed by City Council member Gale Brewer, whom the family would want to see the most.
Just give us your name before you leave. Your name and spell it.
My name is Eva Chen. I'm part of the East Harlem Community Board 11.
Can you spell it, please?
EVACHAN. And we are part of the organization called Upper Manhattan Asian American Alliance, who have been providing some service for our Asian seniors here, who are also here.
Thank you, Eva. Everybody hear me? All right, I just want to convey thanks from the Ma family to Eva and the Upper Manhattan Asian Alliance, Alvin back behind me here, and Richie of the Harlem Watch, and the other organizers for putting together this Vigil. And I also like to thank Detective Theodoric of the 2-5 Detective Squad. I'd like to thank the ADAs working to dot all the I's, cross all the T's, and hopefully, since the office, the chief medical examiner has ruled this a homicide, we are waiting for the district attorney's office to re-indict Powell on murder charges, and we hope for a speedy trial and hold him accountable for this action. Harlem is a diversifying community. So this vigil serves a dual purpose to try to bridge the cultural gap between the different ethnic backgrounds here. I met Calvin and Rich.
Can you please closer to the microphone, please?
You can't hear me?
Yeah. Now I can.
Then you put your mic over here.
Well, be nice to me. I'm proud of you.
I met Calvin and Rich on this corner last April, 2 days after the attack when the first rally was held. Now we've worked together. We've attended court hearings. We've supported the family, and you know, we come from different backgrounds. We come from different ethnicities, and we've worked. We have our own little differences. I mean, Richie back here, he's an iPhone guy. I'm Android. Well, we live to understand this. We accept this of different people, and so you know, this community. All its different backgrounds. You need to start to work together. We're all human. So I hope that something positive can come out of Mr. Ma's death here. Thank you. Carlin Chan, Karlin Chan, and the family spokesperson.
应该跟那个Eva， Oh, John something.
Good morning, I'm Gale Brewer. I'm the City Council member for the Upper West Side, formerly Manhattan Borough President. And I'm here because we've been here before, unfortunately. I remember when the attack happened and we joined. I want to thank Eva, who is a member of Board 11, and I want to thank Carlin, who's a member of Board 3. These are people who care about their community desperately and who act. And this particular horror, they're all awful. We've been to too many press conferences about people getting killed. They seem to be almost every week. This particular one was horrific. The family's devastated. A Harlem community, East Harlem in particular, has come together trying to bridge, as Carlin indicated, different communities. The good news is there's a large, growing Asian community, active. Eva has led in some cases as a member of the board, bringing the community together. There are a lot of seniors. And I think this horror, this murder, was particularly, as I indicated, awful because Mrs. Ma, understandably, was so devastated. We don't forget her. We don't forget the family. But her image and her face is always in my mind. And I do want to thank the community because Carlin has been the spokesperson and rallied from day one. But the fact of the matter is the community has rallied against them, rallied with the Ma family in a very special way. I want to thank Eva also because the community has said enough in terms of activity that is illegal on the street. That is perhaps in many cases we want to figure out how people can get services and figure out how they can be helped. And that's been my goal and will continue to be my goal as a member of the City Council. So I'm here just to say thank you. A lot of work to be done, but the Ma family will never, ever be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Okay. Now, with the family's permission, our pastor from Harlem Clergy, Community United and Beyond, an organization of a group of clergy who came together to fight gun violence in our community. Led by Pastor Stacy Ramos, and this organization will say a prayer for Mr. Ma. So Pastor James Lynch and Apostle Onila Chica also.
We are live in Manhattan, 125th Street, 3rd Avenue.
Yes, sir. My name is James Lynch. I'm the current president of the Buddhist Council of New York. I did want to say a few things just so you know. We're about 900,000 members here in the New York City area. A vast majority of those members are Asian Americans. And on behalf of the council, the entire council, we're here to recognize the life of Yao Pan Ma, to offer our deepest condolences to Mr. Ma's family and his extended community, and to mindfully remember a man whose life was cut down too soon. But as a Buddhist, I think that we must be mindful that Yao Pan Ma, as a human being, represents more than himself. The Yao Pan Ma represents his ancestors, his beautiful culture, and our collective future. So when we lost him, we lost a part of the human world that is connected to all life, and that is in a real sense connected to all of us. So we must remember that we must find a way to love each other, not just in words, but through our actions. And we must not be afraid to say killing an innocent is wrong, and that we will find a way to act so that everyone is safe, and that love is our watchword from here going forth. Indeed, regardless of our faith path or tradition, as our Quaker friends would say, let our life speak to others. And so with that, let me offer my prayer. And here is my mindful prayer for Yao Pan Ma, mindful of his life, his culture, his legacy, and yes, our collective future. May all beings everywhere, may all beings everywhere, plagued by suffering of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy. By the virtue of Yao Pan Ma's merits, may no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding peace. May the naked find clothing. May the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth. Those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines everywhere be effective, and wholesome prayers bear fruit. And may all those who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then, we too remember the life and legacy of Yao Pan Ma, and may our lives speak to dispel the miseries of the world. Thank you very much.
Sorry. Good morning and shalom. My name is Apostle Only Love Chica Alston, and I am a Harlem resident and minister with Prophetic Whirlwind Ministries and a member of Harlem Clergy United and Beyond under Apostle Stacy Ramos, the community pastor for Harlem. And she could not be here today, but she sends her deepest prayers and condolences to you. Today, as a minister of the good news, I stand with the family, I stand with the community, and I stand with the family and friends of Yao Pan Ma, because we are all one. We are all loved by the Most High God. Can you help me this morning? Just look at someone in the eye and say, we are one. We are one. We are one. And we are covered by his love. And so love is stronger than death. That is what I read in the Song of Solomon. And so let us pray this morning as I pray in my tradition. In the name, righteousness, and authority of Yeshua, the Messiah, Jesus Christ, I come to you, Almighty Father, asking that the family of our brother Yao Pan Ma, that this whole community, and even East Harlem that has been riddled with too much violence, tangibly feel your love today. But not only your love as a feeling, but help us feel your love through actions to end violence. Because nothing, not even hate, can separate us from your love. So I'm asking asking during this time that you be with the family, that you speak to them. And as Apostle Paul reminds us, who should separate us from God's love? Shall trouble or hardship or persecution or danger or sword? No, in all these things, we are more than conquerors than him who loved us. For I am convinced not even death, nor life, nor angels, nor demons, or hate can separate us from the love of God. And so let us come together and let us dedicate ourselves to ending hate. Heavenly Father, fill us with your love, the type of love that will help us end violence in our community. And we pray for your divine comfort. In Yeshua's name, amen.
While we were planning this simple vigil in East Harlem, we heard the horrifying news about Michelle Go. Little do we know, there will be 2 vigils in 1 week of such similar cases. We clearly need a better way to treat and monitor those suffering from severe mental illness in order to keep us all safe. Most speakers on Tuesday's vigil repeated this point, so we are not going to belabor the point. But beyond that, due to these 2 incidents, some members of the AAPI community might feel a distrust of the Black community. But I thought, as Carlin Chen has said, Harlem can show New York that we can actually live together in relative harmony. In this uniquely diverse neighborhood, you just look around, everyone who are gathered here, people of all colors live close to each other, and people do care for each other. Look at people who came out to grieve with Mr. Ma's family and to support the Asian seniors here. There's a big group here from the Wagner House, the Naisha housing, where Mr. Ma lived. There are also workers who service the Asian seniors in the healthcare centers, in the senior centers here. I know these people, they are not just coming out to show their face in front of cameras. These are people who service our seniors day in and day out. There are also many community board members, district leaders, block association, tenant association people here. It's not perfect, I'll be real, but there's still a lot of love and we make it work in here. So in here we ask all of us, people of all color, to recommit to unity. If we better integrate and trust each other, we can work out a solution. Harlem can be an example for us. Here's an example of a man who cares so deeply. Calvin Hunt from Harlem Watch, together with Colin Chan, went to court date with Yao Pan Ma's family every time, and he calls the family every Friday. So I'll let him speak to you.
Sir, can you say your name again?
Calvin Hunt, hate crimes activist for Harlem Community Watch. Okay, I just want everybody just to be silent for 1 minute. The reason why I said that, because that's what Mr. Ma, I was at the funeral last week with the family, and it was horrific. That's all I can tell you. Right there on that corner, that's where he was beat. And from his injuries, that's caused his death. That's why I'm glad that our faithful district attorney, Alvin Bragg, is here, so I can let him know face to face, you must upgrade them charges to murder. Call a spade a spade. A homicide's a homicide. That was a murder. Resolve them from that. And hopefully I'll be working with Mr. Bragg to bring some justice to the city, because they've been taking a lot of his words and twisting, about the misdemeanor, No, he didn't say that. Don't start saying what you think he said. I understood what he said. And he's doing a good job so far being with the conditions that we in. So I'm just letting them know that Harlem Community Watch, Calvin Hunt, Richard Kirkpatrick will be with him at his office to help him any kind of way to get the guns off the street and to stop the violence in the Black community. Okay, I'll stand before you and I'll say this, I hope I don't offend nobody because I don't bite my tongue. Each incident, a black male has pushed Mrs. Go over the train station and killed Mr. Ma. So I want y'all to realize one thing. All black people in Harlem is not like that. We love the Asian community. I stand behind the Asian community. I have another organization called Asian Lives Matter. So when y'all see this, I don't want nobody to start no hatred or no thing like it's a clash between blacks and Asians. Because there's a lot of Asians out here right now that know me. I'm in Chinatown, I'm in Flushing, I'm on 59th Street. Everywhere an Asian has had something happen, I has been there. To let y'all know that all blacks don't think like that. It's like all Asians don't think like that. You got 2 degrees of each ethnic group. Unfortunately, and I'm gonna say this, I hope I don't offend nobody. Black people and niggas. It's a difference between white folks and a cracker. It's the mentality of it. So when you see somebody like that, don't say a black man pushed that lady in front of the train. Don't say a black man killed Mr. Ma. No, that was a nigga. And it's a big difference, like night and day. All right, I'm a black man. Richard Kapacha, a black man. Al Sharpton, Mr. Bragg, these are black men. We trying to bring justice to the streets in the city of New York. So I want y'all to remember this family. Brother Colin here and Mrs. Ma, I want y'all to keep them in your prayers. And don't forget them like y'all did Sean Bell. Because New York is good for that. You know, we get roused up for a minute and have a couple of vigils. And next week I say, you remember Ma? Who? Not who, Ma. All right, so let's get out that stigma of forgetting where we come from. And on that note, God bless the city. God bless our Mayor Eric Adams. And God bless Alvin Bragg for doing a good job. And he's going to continue to do a job because he's going to have people in the streets with him. And on that note, God bless everybody. Have a good day.
The AAPI community is lucky to have such a strong supporter. And in here, a lot of the AAPI community from outside of Harlem has come to support our Asian seniors. And to them, I want to say a few words. To improve safety in the long run, we need to invest. To improve safety in the long run for everyone, we need to invest in our at-risk youth and to better integrate everyone. So AAPI community, I invite you to ask for help in mental health, but also more resources for our young people here in Harlem, so they don't become the criminal elements that impact your safety. For example, there are many organizations that work around this area that I want to give a shout out to. So for example, Exodus, raise your hand if you're here. They're doing great for our youth. There's Mayor Office of Criminal Justice and Office of Neighborhood Safety. These folks are really running around in the nighttime housing that are all around East Harlem, putting their own life at risk trying to get to our youth. There's also neighborhood benches and GOSO right over there. So these are people who come out to really denounce violence, and as you can see, they are very much close to the Asian community as well, and I saw how much they hurt when the incident happened. So now we're gonna have some of our elected officials speak. We're grateful that so many elected officials could be here to tell us about their plan to improve safety. We need real action so Yao Ping Ma and Michelle Go will not die in vain. So specifically, elected official, given how cold it is, we're gonna end on time, so I ask you to focus on just 2 questions. How do we keep our streets safer while implementing criminal justice reform that we want? How do we strike a balance? How do we not leave people with serious mental issues languishing in homeless shelters or subway system? Question number 1. Question number 2, how do we keep this particular area safer? Over the decade, government continues to put more social services unwanted by other neighborhoods here and in some other black and brown neighborhoods. It becomes a breeding ground for criminal elements and mental health issues. Ultimately, It impacts outer district too now, as we see. So how can social services in New York City be more fairly distributed? I'm going to turn over to our Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg.
I want to start by echoing the sentiment of we are one, which we heard earlier. We are all one. We're all one in this community. I'm a neighbor here. This affects me deeply. We are all one. AAPI community and the Black community standing together against hate. Our AAPI brothers and sisters have been spit upon, coughed at, told to go back home. It's intolerable. We will not stand for it. In my office, we are deepening our capacity. We're expanding our hate crimes unit so that we can give these cases the resources that they deserve. Obviously can't talk about a specific matter, but know that this matter is one of utmost importance to us. We'll continue to stand with the community and the family. And I know you told me this to be brief, so I will leave it at that for the day. Thank you.
Well,
Are you going to upgrade the charges, sir? Will you be upgrading the charges?
I can't talk about an open case, but you will be hearing from us in the days to come about the case.
But we want to hear specifically about what you plan to do.
So safety is primary in our office, right? That's what I go to sleep thinking about. That's what I wake up thinking about. And it's focusing on the drivers of crime, focusing particularly, you mentioned it in your remarks, in this neighborhood, which I know and call home, and our oversaturation here. And so getting a balance in this neighborhood of both services. You mentioned some of our great service providers, but also the safety that we need and we deserve. And law enforcement here working side by side, we will keep this community safe. That's the plan. The plan is for our prosecutors to handle these cases, give them the attention they deserve. We have most phenomenal, dedicated career prosecutors in the Manhattan DA's office in handling these cases and doing them vigorously, as we will send a message to the communities that we stand with them and that we will not tolerate it.
When people go into the mic and speak louder, please. Thank you.
Thank you, District Attorney. Next, I will call on Derek Perkinson from National Action Network to speak a few words. The reason why Nan is speaking today is because after Yau Ping Ma was attacked, I thought we must improve safety. If you don't act now, someone else will get hurt again here. It is such a sensitive topic, but Reverend Sharpton went out of his way to help. He said, let's call Andrew.
Good morning, everyone. Derek Perkinson with the National Action Network. Organization started 31 years ago by the Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton, who couldn't be here today. But he sends me to stress that violence in any capacity is never, never, never accepted. We are a non-violent, peaceful organization. And we look at Yau Ping Ma as an example of us letting the community down. We need more services. We need more resources from the DA, from the elected officials. However, we need to teach our communities, our families, that hate is not acceptable to no one, to no ethnic culture. Mr. Yao was just providing for his family on the day he was attacked. Wasn't bothering anyone. He was beat almost to death. A year ago, this happened. Just last week, a young lady, Michelle Go, suffered getting pushed on the subway system. We have to do better. Each of us have to do better in making sure the children know, our families know, hate will not be accepted. I'll keep my remarks brief. We have youth programs. We have senior programs. We have programs. We have assistance in crisis management, the National Action Network. People in need, please come out. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to speak is
Education Fund. Shirley.
Good morning, everyone. Elected officials, thank you to the Upper Manhattan Asian American Alliance for inviting me to speak this morning. I'm Shirley Ng from the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. All Death has protected and promoted the civil rights of Asian Americans since 1974. First, I want to express our condolences to the family of Yau Pan Ma. Today, we call for unity in Harlem, unity in all of New York, as we remember Mr. Ma, who was after brutally attacked. He was just collecting cans to support his family after losing his job due to the pandemic. Some of us have lost jobs, some of us have lost loved ones. Some have lost a sense of security walking through the streets, and now we are fearful of riding the subways. Just last Saturday, Michelle Go was pushed onto the subway tracks and killed by an oncoming train. Data shows that crimes against Asian Americans have rose over 300% this year in New York City compared to last year. When does this end? Our Asian American community, especially women and seniors, are feeling very vulnerable because it always seems to be another Asian being randomly attacked. When these attacks happen, what is it telling us? What is it saying about Asian Americans? That do we not belong here? And that we are not acceptable humans? These are the same messages that people of color continue to face every day. The Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund has been in several neighborhoods across New York City distributing handouts to mitigate hate crimes and to provide free legal consultation to victims of anti-Asian violence and harassment. The rise in anti-Asian hate and violence must end now. We ask for unity in every community and from our elected officials to create more resources for those who need it, so that no one shall resort to hate and violence as a solution to their problems. Our communities, the victims and their families need help, and those charged with the crimes need help too. Our communities deserve to be safe. We want the mayor, elected officials to work together to provide mental health services as well as health care for all in available languages, culturally appropriate outreach also. Inclusive public education about the history of all communities of color, affordable, decent housing for New Yorkers, and more funding for community-based solutions to redefine public safety and not just continuing to increase police presence. We also want justice for the victims' families. We demand a full investigation of these attackers, and that includes past run-ins with the law, institutions, agencies, and psychiatric evaluations. As we mourn the loss of Yau Pan Ma and Michelle Go and so many other Asian Americans, let's not forget the 19-year-old Crystal Nieves shot while working in Harlem. We need community unity to work together to stop the hate and violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. As you see, even though organizations that are not based in Harlem have been coming to support our Asian seniors, and we really want to call them out and thank them. That's why the next speaker is Asian American for Equity from Jennifer Sun. They've been working closely with our council member Diana Ayala in giving out Asian meals and groceries for our seniors.
Thank you, Eva. I'm Jennifer Sun, Co-Executive Director of AFI. I am here today to join the family of Yau Pan Ma in remembering his life and calling for justice. I'm also here today to join all of you in calling for unity through our work of serving low-income immigrant communities and fighting for our right to live in safety and work with dignity. We have seen too many examples of how poverty breaks people down and creates cycles of violence. Our communities cannot be safe when thousands of New Yorkers can't find affordable housing, a living wage job, or be able to access the social and mental health services that are the basic necessities to live with humanity and be a good neighbor. I believe we are all here today because we want to be a part of healing our communities and advocating for the investment that our communities need and deserve, while also building bonds of mutual respect, trust, and care for each other. On behalf of AFI, I thank the Upper Manhattan Asian American Alliance, Union Settlement, and Wagner Houses Tenant Association for welcoming us into this neighborhood, for their partnership and support for AFI to launch a monthly food distribution, not only for Asian seniors, but for other East Harlem residents, and to be a part of building community in East Harlem by sharing resources that benefit all families who live here. We strongly believe that coming together beyond differences is crucial for everyone to feel safe and a belonging in their community. And we at AFI remain committed to doing our part to fight for community safety, justice, and equity. Thank you.
Next, we'll have Congressmember Grace Meng, who has been such a great supporter for the AAPI community. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm Congresswoman Grace Meng, and I just really want to thank all of our organizations, Black organizations, Asian organizations, diverse organizations who put together this event here today. I want to thank Manhattan DA Bragg and his team for his utmost attention to this case. And I want to thank organizations like Meng, like Derek and Reverend Sharpton, whenever there is a case involving Asian American incidents and crimes, they are always ready to help and answer the call. We know that our community has suffered from too many senseless acts of violence, and we are still in shock over the horrifying murder of Michelle Go last weekend. And today we are here in the memory of Yao Pan Ma, with his family, his friends, his neighbors, with so many who loved him. No person and no family deserves to walk through their grief. In the aftermath of these horrible incidents, it's really easy to let our passions consume us. But know that placing blame, it's too cold, I can't talk, pointing fingers will not defeat racism, hatred, or bigotry. We have to honor the memory of Yao Pan Ma and Michelle Go by bringing our communities together like we are doing today and combating so many of the injustices that our communities face with every tool available to us. I'm so proud today as I look around and see this diverse crowd, and I want to especially thank our media outlets, including our outlets who are read and viewed within the Asian and Black communities. We have the ability and the power to expand upon our friendships and our coalitions. We have the ability not just to talk about when one member of one community might hurt another, but to talk about the positive ways that our communities are coming together and working together and helping each other. And that's what we have to do more of. There are so many solutions that people propose and have to help address both of these bias incidents and hate crimes. But know that just adding more law enforcement on the streets and in the subways, it's not going to solve the problem completely. We need to make sure that we are providing more supportive services to many of the people who are committing these incidents. They need more help from our city, state, and federal government. They need places to go and not just shelter,
but real supportive services where they are getting the help that they need. We passed a law in Congress a few months ago, the Hate Crimes Act, which as we wait to be implemented, will provide more resources for our local community organizations and to provide support for programs like mental health support and supportive housing. This is something that it's going to be hard the road ahead. Planning events like this, I don't have to tell all of you, is not easy. It's not easy to bring leaders and communities who may have not had the necessary dialogue before and who have not maybe walked together before, but that actually has been done in the past. And this is an opportunity where we can do more of it, to bring our communities together and to have real investment in the services. So thank you to all the groups that are here. Thank you to Mr. Ma's family for allowing our whole city to share his life and to do what we can to make sure that we are carrying out the legacy of people like Mr. Ma and Michelle Go for all of New York to work together. Thank you everyone, and be safe.
Grace, would you mind taking a tough question? It's one of the things we hear from many homeless people, and John or anyone who wants to answer this. We hear so often from many of the homeless people they're afraid to go to the shelter. Are there any federal programs in the works now to try and get some money to improve the security of the shelter so that more homeless people are willing to go? Up by somewhere right up there, I saw a woman at Times Square barefoot coming out to the house with no clothing. Really was homeless. It was bare. There are a lot of homeless people, and on the subway here I ran with a dozen people in the underpass and and you hear from all of them, so many homeless people will not go to the shelter, but they say it's more dangerous than the street. Are there programs in the works that you talked about? Are there anything that we can do?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. People don't just need physical help. They don't just need physical shelter. They need emotional support. They need medical support and mental health support. We've lost so many psychiatric beds just here in New York State alone. There is legislation on the federal level. I have a bill that would give billions of dollars. We just passed the Build Back Better bill, which will also provide money for programs like this. But we need to make, huh? Well, the Senate has to pass it first, as usual. But we need to make sure that our shelters are a place where people can go and where they can stay. Many shelters are not open during the daytime. That doesn't make sense. People need support, supportive housing. They need to have the mental health and medical support that they need.
Good morning, everyone. I was here the first time.
Say your name again. I know who you are.
I'm Congressman Adriano Espaillat. I represent this district. We were here in a similar vigil when Yao Palma was viciously hurt. And we're here again. Last week I was at a vigil on 116th Street. A young Puerto Rican woman was shot and killed in a Burger King. Tonight, this afternoon, I'm going to a vigil in the Bronx part of the district where an 11-month-old baby is fighting for his life. Despair and hurt, and in the middle of that, a pandemic, we were also, Grace and I were also in a call with the mayor over the horrific incident in the subway. So we've been through a lot these last 2 years, and whether you believe it or not, it's taken a toll on our spirit and our city, right? And mental health services, I think, are crucial right now. People lost their loved ones. People maybe lost their jobs. Maybe they were fighting for their lives in the hospital for 3 months. So there is a collective trauma with COVID, but there's violence out there, and of course this is, you know, a hate crime. Which, on top of the violence, this is a hate crime. And so we have to bring the services, and Ray spoke about the Build Back Better program. It has money there for homeless prevention. It has monies for violence interdiction intervention, so that neighborhoods have their own formula to address violence in their street corner. It has additional funding for supportive housing. And so this is, it has many dollars for NYCHA complexes, which are hurting and really in inhumane conditions. And so the scene that you saw at the subway is something that you may run into in a NYCHA building complex. And so we need a major investment to address the hurt, the mental hurt, and the physical issues that we have. For supported housing for people that need, you know, need that kind of service. They need that kind of intervention. So particularly now, you know, after these 2 years that have been really rough. You walk around, I've been in these neighborhoods for, you know, 50 plus years, and you walk around and you can see that people are hurting, you know, and so we need to intervene. Government must be a force of good, and we must bring the dollars to the neighborhood. It's not just enough to bring transportation infrastructure money. That's good, 2nd Avenue subway, a bunch of things. But we need the human infrastructure. The human infrastructure to reach deep down in people's heart and soul and the gut, that's right, to address these issues. They're tough issues. Homelessness is not an easy issue. There may be other factors involved in there. Substance abuse, you know, other factors, mental health issues, you know, family issues, poverty, hunger. It's not that easy, but the city is being overrun by this problem, and we must, in Washington, we must come up with the dollars to help address these. And so I'm here today to show solidarity to this family, because as my colleague Grace Meng said, you know, we may distrust each other, but when we work together, we tear down those walls, those differences. The only way that we come together and we begin to trust each other is when we work together. When we work together, then maybe we'll go out and have lunch together. We may call each other that night, and then we begin to know who we really are, and then those divisions are broken down. We must work closer together to ensure that this doesn't happen. You know, I was very upset when I was here last time, and I'm very upset right now. This is happening just far too much in the city. And, you know, and so imagine a mom with her baby in her car while the father goes into a pharmacy and gets shot in the face. Come on. And so government must be a force of good. We must do better and bring the dollars home. And so we have to Build Back Better program, $1.7 trillion. It has a host of things. And games are being played in the Senate about it. These dollars must come now. So Grace and I will be going back. I will be fighting for that. I thank you all for being here. This is what we need, to work together and be with each other. And then that's how we break down the distrust. Thank you. We'll keep the faith.
Thank you, Congressman.
Sorry.
And Grace, if you don't mind me ask a question. I hear a lot of AAPI community asking for more resources. But what we see in Harlem is somehow these resources keep getting added to Harlem, and we don't see them getting added to other districts. So I want to invite you all the districts in New York City, to all take your fair share and help the vulnerable people. Can we get your commitment to help in this regard?
I think part of it is to make sure that whether it's our media or community organizations within our own community, that we are being honest about the most vulnerable in our community. We don't have enough data and statistics because government from the state to the federal level does not accurately keep track of what happens to the API community, from incidents of crime to bias to health disparities and diseases that our community face. And when we don't have the data, we don't know the extent of how serious the problem is, it's harder to come up with the solutions. There are organizations working in our districts, such as AFI, who are working to make sure that they are taking care of the most vulnerable in our community. I know that New York State passed legislation about the disaggregation of data. The federal government passed legislation last year that would, for example, require local entities to even collect data on both bias incidents and hate crimes, because most of them don't. If you look at the statistics from last year, hate crime and bias incidents decreased because they're not collecting the statistics. And we all know here on the ground that that's not true. So we need to make sure that government is doing the work of collecting the numbers. For example, one of the first issues I worked on when I first got into office was mental health. We asked the city for Korean speakers on the mental health hotline. The city at the time said, we don't need Korean speakers because people don't call who speak Korean who are asking for help. We said, because you don't have the resources. So you don't know the extent of the problem, you're not able to provide a solution. So we need to work on more data to let people know how serious these problems are within our communities everywhere.
And thank you for your commitment. In Harlem, we really suffer from excessive density of homeless shelters, drug treatment clinics, mental health clinics. And we invite all districts in New York City to help the vulnerable population. For the next to speak is State Senator John Juhl. Thank you, Grace and John, for coming. Our Asian seniors are thrilled to see you and for your support, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. A lot's been said already. I just want to say that, look, nobody ever imagined that COVID would take us 2 years in. And along the entire 2 years, the Asian American community has faced an unprecedented onslaught of anti-Asian hate. And with the last month or so of Omicron hitting our city, a country, and a world, that anti-Asian hate has once again been on an uprise. And so what we saw with Michelle Go, this passing of Yapan Ma, it's so hard to describe how it feels. Legally, some things may not be categorized as hate, but you know, Asian Americans feel the hate. Asian Americans fear the hate. There's no one magic solution that is going to get us out of this crisis. Everything has to be done. Education about Asian Americans, so that we are not dehumanized all the time, so that we are not so viciously beaten to death. Mental health services, so we can get the resources to those individuals who need the resources. Transitional housing, so we can get people off the streets and into safe environments. But what is also needed is justice. Justice for Yapan Ma, Mrs. Ma, and their family, so that people can't think that they can take an Asian life so cheaply and have no consequences. We have to do all of these things. Services, education, and consequences for those who would perpetrate this kind of inhuman attack against Yapan Ma and countless other Asian Americans and other people.
So let's do all of this together. I'm so proud of Eva and the Upper Manhattan Asian American Alliance and all the organizations represented here, because this is something that we never would have wanted to happen. But it happened, and it has now brought everybody together. Thank you so much, Eva.
John, before you go,
New Jersey passes bill. We're going to pass the bill here in New York State also. That would be a bill to require Asian American education in public school. I'm sorry, education about Asian American history and our experience across all the public schools in New York State.
Next to speak is really new Assemblywoman. She has been very helpful to the Ma family since the attack, so she would just say a few words.
Grandpa John's asking me if I want gloves. I so appreciate all the work that all of you have been doing. I appreciate Carlin. I appreciate all of the families who are gathered here today. 我们都累了. We're all very tired. We're all very tired because words can't even express what's going on in our communities in the last weeks, in the last months, in the last years. And this kind of hatred isn't new. This kind of hatred is systemic. It's something that is state-sanctioned, and it's something that needs to change. We're angry. Our sadness is rooted in anger. We're angry that we don't have a system that looks like our faces. We don't have a system that looks like the people who have lost their lives and the people who suffer every single day because we've lost our lives. If there's one thing that we owe Mr. Ma, and make no mistake, we owe him many, many things. We owe him to tell the truth. The truth is that Mr. Ma did not fall through the cracks. The truth is, Mr. Ma was not a victim of a broken system. Our system is built to marginalize our immigrant community. The system is built to deprioritize economic support for our low income. Our system does not serve the people the way that it should. Mr. Ma's story, you can't unwrite it. You can't untell it. This is a story of a man who lost his home in a fire in my district in Chinatown on Henry Street. This is a man who lost his income because the pandemic shut down all the restaurants. This is a man who was trying to be a good father, be a good husband. He was trying to be somebody who provided. This is a vigil to honor this man. This is a vigil to make sure that his life is remembered. I've been to too many vigils. Lotus, hi. How many stories have you written about the horrors of our community, the things that have happened within our community? Countless, right? Patrick, how many times have you spoken? Too many.
Carlin, how many times have you had to go to people's homes because of the hurt that people have had to suffer? We don't forget Mr. Salahuddin, who was knifed in the belly. We don't forget Michelle Go. We don't forget Mr. Yalpan Ma. We're never gonna forget. People may think that it's just another event,
and might be check marking it off. But I'm asking for my colleagues who stand behind me. I see so many of our state colleagues, Grandpa John, Al Taylor, Robert Rodriguez, although he's leaving us soon. We have so many, yeah, Ron, oh, I didn't see Ron. Thanks, Ron. And I just wanted to say that, you know, I am so tired of begging for scraps. I am so tired for begging for the little bit of resources that we're able to get. John and I finally were able to get $10 million for our community. This was after years of asking. Asian Americans never had a line item in our state budget. When I was elected, I was fighting for it and fighting for it and fighting for it. And finally they were able to include us, and we got $300,000 out of an $174 billion budget. We were finally able to get $10 million this year, and we know that, you know, our community still hasn't seen the money yet, but we need to make sure that we have those resources. What John is talking about is an important piece of making sure that we have education for how to love one another in our communities, understanding that we all belong here, because guess what? I am tired of asking and begging for people to understand that we deserve to breathe, that we deserve to live, and that we deserve to be here, that we belong here, that this is our home. That's what's rooted in this hate. There is the perpetual foreigner syndrome. People always think that they don't have to give us resources because we somehow don't belong here. On the flip side, there's a model minority myth that says, hey, you're doing fine. You don't need any help. The data disaggregation bill that Grace was talking about, that bill will make it so that we actually have the language access that we need. The things that hurt the most when I'm working in my office is the fact that almost 90% of the time in all of the cases in my office, we need to provide language translation help. The Atlanta shootings, the thing that hurt the most was the fact that when you heard those 911 calls and people couldn't understand on the other line what somebody was saying, broke my heart because they sounded just like us. And we need to make sure that we stay angry and that we don't read this anger as just cynicism, right? We can do better than this, because when we come together and we push our government with one voice and one purpose, we have the ability to do better. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I hope some of the Harlem community members can really hear the pain from our fellow AAPI community. In Harlem, we fight really hard for resources, and you can see the Asian community have exactly the same fight. So we're just so similar. Next, I'll turn to Assemblymember Ron Kim for a few words. We're prioritizing some of the Asian elected officials because our Asian seniors are so cold, and we want to make sure they get to see some of the elected officials.
Thank you. Thank you to the organizers. Let me get Robert Rodriguez up here with me, please. When this happened last year, I reached out to the local electeds, Adriana, Gale Brewer, Madam President, Robert Rodriguez. But I want to particularly thank my colleague in the assembly at the time. He stepped up right away, went to Mr. Ma's house with resources, food, to make sure the wife was taken care of. And I want to thank Carl and Ching, who's standing still here, to your left. Colin, for being there. I was with the family at the very beginning to set up a fund for the wife and to make sure that that money was going to the family. And now, you know, we're grieving his loss, but let this tragedy be a moment, a lesson learned about how to move forward and what policies we must focus on to make sure that we don't blame each other, but we improve the social conditions that led to this moment of tragedy. That it was the social conditions. It was all of our collective fault. And we need to own up to that. Any elected official that's been in office, and I'm the first one to say that we didn't do enough for the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years.
We could have avoided this tragedy if we had invested more in our neighborhoods, but we did not. But we need to accept the mistakes we made so we can get it right moving forward. It's easy to come here and stand with police officers and vilify others and individualize the crime and the violence and say, that's it, we've done our part. We caught that person, it's done, game over. That is not what we do. That is not what Agent Anna does. That is not what John New does. That's not what Grace does. Every elected official that have come up here is taking responsibility moving forward to improve the social conditions to prevent the violence in our communities. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, organizers. We have a lot of work to do. Thank you. Tia, with all the respect, we have a lot of speakers, so we'll get to the end. And thank you, Chong, for being here.
And let me remind everyone, the person who attacked Mr. Ma, he himself is a victim. He lives in a homeless shelter, the congregate homeless shelter on Watts Island. It's basically for people who are abandoned. He lived in a room with 100 other people in the same room. So that means 99 other people in a room were endangered by this man being there. And that kind of condition for congregate shelters must end now. We need to dismantle this congregate shelter and build affordable housing there. Secretary of State Robert Rodriguez.
Thank you, Eva, and thank you all for being here. As was mentioned, I've represented this district in the State Assembly, and of course bring condolences and our prayers from the governor and the lieutenant governor who couldn't be here. But most importantly, it's to make sure that we don't forget what happened to this moment before we're recognizing this vigil. You've heard a lot from the elected officials about the hate crimes that have occurred and the search for justice. And while I was coming here, I was reflecting on, a couple of things. One is, I'm standing here representing the Latino community as well. Hispanics are standing with our Asian brothers and sisters because we are the fabric of New York State. Representing and being from East Harlem, we have been the home of immigrants for centuries. So we have to make sure that that fabric is strong, and that, as you see here, the diversity is really reflective of this city and us supporting one another and our neighbors. And then I was thinking as well, as we get to this moment, did we do enough for Mr. Ma and his family before we got to this tragic moment? And I think, as my colleagues have mentioned, we could always do more. And some of my colleagues here, as Secretary of State, we have an Office of New Americans. We would not have had this office if not for the leadership of Grace, Meng, Adriano, and making sure that the state said we weren't doing enough for our new Americans, for our recently arrived immigrants, regardless of status. So that is why we're making historic investments in supporting our immigrant community. That's why Governor Hochul's put more money into the Office of New Americans to provide not just legal support, but full support for the people, for the immigrants, for the communities that make up this city. So I just want us to make sure that we have a mission going forward. And that's to better support our immigrant community now and in crisis. And I'll leave a number in case somebody sees this, and realizes that they need some support that we can provide. 1-800-566-7636, the Office of New Americans. Thank you, Eva.
We are live right now.
Can you commit to improving the
Manhattan,
condition of
in memory of Yao Ma, who was killed.
The fight doesn't start. Obviously, my heart and soul is always going to be right here in East Harlem, and the conversations have been, how do we create more equitable social support systems, not just at Randall's and Wars Island, all across the East Harlem community, and of course the state of New York. That's important in terms of how we support our communities, both development and as well as our day-to-day social services. So that is part of the mission, the budget, the goals for the governor, and I'm certainly committed to that battle.
And let's build affordable housing on Watts Island. I hope we'll get budget for it. Next to speak, it's Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine, and then Comptroller Lander, who say a few words as well.
Thank you, Eva, for
leading us today, and more importantly, for your activism in the community, for your leadership. I've been proud to partner with you. We had a chance to visit that shelter together
Excuse me.
on
You're
Moores
totally
Island,
covering me, sorry.
and it is unacceptable that our city allows conditions like that to persist. Thank you to Carlin Chen, who had to leave. Appreciate his support for the family and his leadership of this gathering today. I am feeling heartbreak this morning. I'm feeling anger. I am feeling determination. I'm feeling all of these things on behalf of Yao Pan Ma and too many other of our fellow New Yorkers, of members of the Asian American community who we have lost, who we've come together to mourn. We've been to too many vigils this week alone. Mr. Ma followed in the tradition of generations of New Yorkers. He came here to make a better life. He was willing to work hard. He did work hard. His life, the life of his wife, was overturned by the economic shocks of this pandemic. The city failed them. The city was not there to support them in that moment of economic crisis. Mr. Ma did not stop fighting to provide for himself and his family. He wound up on the street collecting cans and bottles because the city did not offer him a better way. Mr. Ma did not deserve this. No one deserved this. No New Yorker deserves this. No member of the Asian American community deserves this. No city can accept this. We must do more to help vulnerable people on the street who are homeless, who are struggling in the grips of mental illness or substance abuse. We must do more to get them into supportive housing, to get them into the mental health treatment they need, to expand the capacity of our hospitals to offer inpatient psychiatric treatment. Manhattan has lost hundreds of inpatient psychiatric beds. We must do more to invest in the programs which make communities safer. After-school programs, youth development programs, workforce development programs, violence interrupter programs like street corner resources. We must denounce this wave of bigotry that has slammed the city, that has hit the AAPI communities of this city so hard. We must come together and say an attack on the Asian American community is an attack on all of us. We denounce bigotry in all its forms. We need to take this on in our school curriculum. We have to come together. It can happen in East Harlem. It is happening in East Harlem. You're seeing it today where Asian American communities, African American residents of this community, Latinos, people of all backgrounds in this incredibly diverse neighborhood are coming together to say enough is enough, to demand justice for Yao Pan Ma. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eva and the Upper Manhattan Asian American Alliance. I want to say just a special thank you to the Asian American elected officials who are here, to Grace and John and Yulene and Ron, but all of the AAPI community and leaders. It's just so hard to have to show up again and again and hold so much pain and grief, and to do that is really powerful, and we thank you for it.
Excuse me, sorry.
It's hard to live in a city with so much identity-based hatred, where so many people, just for being who they are targets. It's hard to live in a city with so much pain and illness, with so much homelessness for all of us right now through this pandemic, through the rise in violence, through the rise in hate. And the question is, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to make Yao Pan Ma's memory, Michelle Isago's memory into blessings of peace and communities coming together? I want to make sure to say to our AAPI communities just how deeply New York, Yao Pan Ma, as I understand it, was a dim sum chef in China. And there's nothing more in New York City than dim sum. Like, that is New York City. You know, as a Jewish New Yorker, we have had the opportunity to come here and have our traditions and culture and heritage not just celebrated and respected, but become New York City. And of course that is true of our Asian American communities and our Latino and our Black communities here in Harlem. So we're not going to let that go. Like, this is not just that people have the right to be safe and respected. This is New York City. It belongs to you. You belong to it. And we all have a responsibility. So 2, how do we fix it? Thoughts. Thank you, Eva, for holding us accountable and pushing us. First, the Controller's Office recently did a survey with CUNY. And we asked people, CUNY asked people, what would make you feel safe on the streets of your city? And across all demographic groups and neighborhoods, the top 2 things people said is housing, so homeless folks aren't on the streets, and connections to mental health services. Those were the top 2 things. So we know it, we say it, but we aren't doing it, and we gotta start right now. And then Eva is pushing us all rightly on this question of what fair share means. I sponsored some legislation in the city council, but I did not get it passed. So now this new generation of council members, they got to improve what we did, and we will work with them. We will provide the data. What fair share means is every neighborhood deserves its fair share of the resources and services and affordable and supportive housing, but it also means all of our neighborhoods have a responsibility for the things that are more challenging. So when homeless shelters decided, they got to be in Park Slope and Park Avenue, not just all concentrated in East Harlem. Every community's got a fair share of access to the resources we all need, and we all do our fair share of the hard things that are required. So I redouble my commitment to you, to Yao Pan Ma and his family, to the whole AAPI community to fight for the resources and services that all communities deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. And we really hope that all of our elected officials from different districts will help commit to passing the fair share legislation. Next to speak is State Senator Jose Serrano.
Thank you, Eva. I'll be really brief. It's so amazing to be here with all of my colleagues, and we send sincere condolences to the Ma family. And you have here such a diverse array of individuals and community leaders speaking with one voice in denouncing this hate and ensuring that we change the narrative and change the culture in this city to make sure that everyone understands. I have the good fortune of representing East Harlem. East Harlem has a long legacy of welcoming new immigrants. I think people in this country and in this city in particular need to learn more the story of the immigrant and how the immigrants built this nation and built this city, and have more respect for their needs. Furthermore, we need to also destigmatize the issue of mental health services, so that people at a younger age can avail themselves of the mental health services that they need to live happier, healthier lives. And again, I think in this community and all communities, we must do more to destigmatize the issue of mental health services. So thank you so much, Eva, and for everyone for making this day possible. Thank you.
So before we have State District Attorney Ching speak, we'll have 2 local leaders, a chair from our Community Board 11, who's been fighting all of these issues that we talked about today for a long time. And then one of our district leader, Peggy Morales, will also say a few words. The district where the attack took place is part of her district.
I'll let Peggy Morales go first, and then I'll speak. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Peggy Morales, and I'm one of the district leaders that represents the East Harlem community. I'm here to stand in solidarity with the Asian community, to denounce the violence that is plaguing our city and demand wraparound services for people challenged by mental illness who are in homeless facilities. While not the only cause of this type of crime, it adds to the uptick in violent crime that this community and so many like it are victimized by. We all deserve to be safe and feel protected on our streets. The Asian American community is no less deserving of that. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank you for your patience in being out here. My name is Xavier Santiago. I'm the chair of Community Board 11.
we have been here on the front lines since day one, and we failed, Mr. Ma. Everyone failed. But we are going to rise up in his memory and serve this community. My community board members who are here, please raise your hands so I can see you. We got Pastor Brown, Russell Schuler, Jason Wu, Eva Chan, all right? Peggy Morales was a former board member. Who else? I see, hey, Nilsa, our former chair is here as well. We stand united. We have continually been asking in the budget process for health and human services, helping advocate for fair share in this community, an equitable distribution, affordable housing, so we can put the rungs back in the ladder and right the wrongs of Robert Moses and Reagan. So I'm going to ask all of you here, please stand with us. Come to our board meetings. They are virtual. You can go to cb11m.org so you can participate as we go through the next stages of the budget process. Thank you for everyone being here.
Thank you, Chair Xavier. So the last one to speak, but definitely no least, is our Attorney General Tish James. Thank you so much. I know you move a lot of schedule in order to come here.
Woo! Yeah. Woo! We stand united against hate with the AAPI community. And whenever there is an act of hate in this city and in this state, across this state, all of us must come together. The Black community, with the Asian community, with the Jewish community, the Latino community. All of us must come together and stand arm in arm with no space between us to say that there is no place for hate in New York City and in New York State. Hate has no place in the state. And so we mourn the murder of Mr. Ma, and we recognize the collective fear and trauma of the AAPI community. Because there is a steady beat, a steady wave of hate crimes against the AAPI community, and we must call it for what it is. Hate. 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 And we must put a stop to it. And so I'm glad that we are in the Harlem community, but it's not limited to the Harlem community. All of us must recognize that hate will not be tolerated anywhere in the city and state. And if anyone commits an act of hate, they should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Period. End of stop. And what's more tragic about this circumstance is what's more tragic about this incident, that it was compounded by cultural insensitivity and the language barriers and the failure of our safety net, the lack of housing, the lack of true affordable housing, the failure of a mental health system, and the fact that so many individuals, particularly people of color, have been ignored, vulnerable communities. And here we are in a city where there are more elected officials of color. The question is, what are we doing on the city level, on a state level, on a federal level to provide more funds to the AAPI community, more funds to individuals who are struggling with mental illness, more funds to individuals who are struggling to find affordable housing, more funds for individuals who are victimized by fires, more funds for excluded workers. What are we doing with the power that we have?
Not a damn thing.
We need to join with one another.
You're absolutely right, Mommy.
All of us must join together.
Yes, ma'am.
And demand that we can do better in this city and in this state. And so I thank the organization for being here today, but all of us must recognize that Mr. Ma was a New Yorker like you and I. He was part of our family. And I need everyone to hear that. Some people think that they basically have the power to decide who's a New Yorker and who isn't. Well, you don't, because all of us are New Yorkers.
Amen.
And I think there's some people who can be attacked with zero consequences. And my message to you is that if you attack anyone who is different, you will be arrested again and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Okay. Yes. There you go, baby.
And so we take hatred of immigrants personal. I know I do. We take hatred of Asian Americans personal. We take the scrawling of racist remarks personal. We take the shouting of racist comments personal. And we take assaulting and the killing and the murder of individuals, innocent individuals, collecting cans to support their family personal.
Exactly.
And so as the Attorney General, I stand with this organization. I stand with the district attorney. I stand with law enforcement. And I'll tell anyone, regardless of who you look like, regardless of what you think you are, that if you go against any member of this community, then you've got to go against all of us. All of us. All of us. Hate will not be tolerated in the city and state. My name is Letitia James, Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the state of New York.
Love you. May I ask you one last question? How do you keep everyone in New York City safe? Many people do not feel safe now.
What we need to do is make sure that individuals are required to identify those who engage in hate. We must make sure that we report. Individuals are mandated to report hate crimes in the city and the state of New York. We need to provide resources to marginalized and vulnerable communities. We need to stand together, and whenever there is an act of hate, we need to come together. And we need to make sure, because these crimes, particularly against the AAPI community, are underreported. And people need to feel safe. The Office of the Attorney General has a hate task force and a hotline, and I'm so glad you asked me. And I urge everyone to report crimes and incidents of hate to the Attorney General's office, because it's a safe space, and I welcome all to come.
There you go. There you go. Beautiful.
With this, we're just giving some closing remarks. I want my sister, Alexis McSween, to come up to just close with a story. Alexis is really my other sister, and she came from humble background, and through social services provided by the city, she climbed up, and now she owns a construction firm. She's helping to build our 125th Street Library, public library, Apollo Theater, La Maqueta, and so social services works. And what she's doing now is giving back, helping at-risk youth to find excellent internships in well-established real estate firms. So in here, I invite all the AAPI community, do more for at-risk youth, volunteer for at-risk youth. You can help raise fund for them. If you own the company, hire an at-risk youth, because that will keep everyone safer eventually. Thank you. And our founder, Lydian, will give to make the last few statements. Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone for coming. We've heard a lot of remarks, and I'll be honest, there are days when I just want to stay at home. I don't even want to go outside because I'm too afraid. But I feel braver now. I feel inspired. I hope everyone, as the days go on, just do something very simple. Just reach out to somebody, talk to somebody. You can call me, you can call Eva, talk to somebody who's here. And if we're talking about love, it doesn't have to be that lofty. Just make a friend with somebody that you have never been friends with before, who is of a different background, of a different race, whatever you want to call it. When I feel down, I think about my friends. I think about all of the friends that I've had in my life who are Asian or white or Mexican or black or gay or whatever. I think about the friends in my past, and I feel stronger and I reach out. So I hope that everybody just
If you don't want to get politically involved, just make a new connection, talk to somebody who's here. If you do want to get involved, please reach out to Eva or myself at the Upper Manhattan Asian American Alliance. And please, let's remember Mr. Ma and move forward. Thank you.
Oh gosh, excuse me.
And this is another just excellent organization.
I'm James Watson on behalf of Exodus and Julio Medina.
I'm Ching.
I'm employed at the trauma center. We offer trauma intervention for the Harlem community and particularly for the Asian community for situations like this. We've been talking about mental health all throughout the vigil. However, trauma intervention oftentimes looks like the face of mental health. Okay, we have to address the trauma that has been unaddressed and allows you to act and respond a certain way. That's what trauma does to the body. That's what trauma does to people. So we, here at Exodus on 124th, 123rd, and 3rd Avenue, we offer trauma intervention services. Come to the CTI building, okay, and we have a menu of services: dog therapy, talk therapy, yoga, exercise, a host of services that we exercise in treating trauma. So please come to the CTI building at Exodus on 124th and Lexington. I'll be passing out pamphlets and leaflets. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate you coming. I know it's a freezing day. Thank you for your care for Mr. Yao Ping Ma. Let his name never be forgotten. Let his death not be in vain.
Eva, amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Bravo! Bravo! Good job. Oh, thank you.
Okay, let me find.
You'll see it at Juhl Media.
It's
Juhl.
Media. I got you. Right
See?
here.
Right there. Yeah, it's still running. Okay, I'm going to end this. We're going to end this class. Thank you so much for following. I will see you again. And please please support Asian Americans. I run into a lot of people and people just running to you. So thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I know you did it intentionally.
No, I did not.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. No problem.